I think it's really interesting as I'm working with entrepreneurs, what I'm noticing, especially in that female gender aspect of it, is the element of wanting to connect, but when they go off the meds, all of a sudden they're feeling very scattered
Mm.
and not able to feel in control.
Mhm.
And so there's that element of what is the right approach? Do I medicate? Do I not medicate? What are the
Mm.
alternatives? And I think what's really interesting about your business is that you give a more somatic
Mhm.
aspect to look at things.
Mhm. Yes.
Mhm.
My background, so as somebody who is an entrepreneur, I was an entrepreneur and dibble-dabbled in all kinds of different, businesses. So I had Hindson Biotechnology, I suppose my background is in science, and I was a biotech consultant. And because of the, overwhelm that comes with ADD and the lack of organization that I experienced, the lack of planning, the flying by the seat of my pants approach, because I was living an exciting life, right? It's like living on the edge. And that was my addiction is, I mean, that's part of it is how do we get our dopamine hit? And for me, it was living with that excitement of not knowing and taking on projects that were challenging, right? That were a little bit over my head. And from that experience, I I knew something in me needed some help.
Welcome to the Karis Wright Show. I'm Karis Wright, and I'm thrilled for you to join me today. I'm talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, which is ADHD. The reason being is that I actually grew up with a sibling who had ADHD and still has ADHD, as a matter of fact. And I'm also a parent of an ADHD child. And so having this discussed in today's day and age is really important as we have more and more adults coming into the workforce that are challenged by this. But I have an amazing guest, Alexandra Hindson from Clarity Coaching, who actually looks at ADHD, as do I, as a superpower. So I'm very
Mm,
thrilled to have you come and chat with us at
mm,
the Karis Wright Show about this really important
mm,
topic. So
a
let's
pleasure.
start off with, I would love to understand from you how you got into
Yeah.
supporting entrepreneurs and really busy, high performing professionals with ADHD.
Yes, I did a pivot. 2 years ago, I was working with university students with ADHD and learning disabilities. I come from a background of education. I
Mhm.
was teaching at Mount Royal College. And then when it went to university, I transitioned into working as an academic strategist with accessibility services at the university. And so I was working with hundreds of students with various learning disabilities, but most often the people who would show up in front of me had ADHD. And so what I did was I helped them with time management, organization, reading strategies, study strategies, focus and concentration, exam taking, and a gamut of different strategies. But I'll never forget there was one student, and I'm just going to use this as an example, as a piece of anecdotal evidence, is the way that I work with clients is I use a yogic tradition of using symbolism and unpacking the unconscious using symbolism. And so I had him write out 3 symbols for his semester at the end. So we did a wrap up. And the one symbol that showed up was a clock that was blurred out. I
Mm.
think that's a classic image of somebody with ADHD is time blindness. It was perfect. It was so beautiful. Couldn't have done it better. So yeah, that's how I got there. And then when I left the university, I started my own consulting practice and worked with university students. So I was connected with all of the universities in Alberta as well as in parts of Canada. So, and then I decided I wanted to leverage this. I wanted to work with adults who were committed to the practices that I was using, which are mindfulness-based, holistic approach, and who wanted to make deeper change. And so I made that pivot. Really, it's been about 6 to 18 months, so it's not even been full 2 years. And so I've started working and started a program called Awaken Awaken, Rewire, and Reclaim Your ADHD Superpower. So for me, it's been exciting switching it from ADHD as being a problem to recognizing the incredible strengths and using that as the foundation for the program.
What a beautiful arc to being able to help students within the university to be able to expand on that. What You're clearly passionate about this.
I love teaching and I love teaching and I love the tools that I use and I love the people I work with because they're very unique. People with ADHD I find are highly creative. Most often, so in the research that I've done, they also show and exhibit an openness. So they're open to different strategies, they're open to different philosophies, and even more open to a spiritual approach to helping them tap their superpower.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us just to kind of level set in the fact that neither one of us are psychologists,
Mm.
psychiatrists, and we're coming at this from our personal experience working with high performing individuals with ADHD. And
Mhm.
I have a number of individuals that I've worked with within my own coaching firm and practice as well as a parent. What are you noticing as people are coming into the program?
Hmm. I am noticing just there seems to be a certain epidemic of anxiety and depression that a lot of people are dealing with. When I'm working with my clients, those are two of the main issues that they're struggling with.
Mhm.
Uh, there's also the issue of medication. I have clients who work with me who want to get off of medication, but actually like how they feel on it.
Mm,
But recognize that there is a price to pay, and that can be anywhere from reduced appetite
mm,
to difficulty sleeping to what is more subtle is the numbing of emotions. And so they're recognizing in their later years, in their businesses, in their relationships, that they're not fully present.
mm.
They're not fully themselves. And I would say that this is probably, from my own experience, um, having navigated this route of what would be classic ADD symptoms, is a mask of perfection.
Mm.
And I think many women encounter that where they're not themselves. And if they're on meds, that accentuates or exacerbates the problem because they're not able to really get in touch with their emotions.
The emotional aspect, and of
Mm,
course, as a woman, that is a really important aspect of wholeness for us. I think it's really interesting as I'm working with entrepreneurs, what I'm noticing, especially in that female
mhm,
gender aspect of it, is the element of wanting to connect, but when they go off the meds, all of a sudden they're feeling very scattered
mm,
and not able to feel in control.
mhm,
And so there's that element of what is the right approach? Do I medicate? Do I not medicate? What are the
mm,
alternatives? And I think what's really interesting about your business is that you give a more somatic
mhm,
aspect to look at things.
mhm. Yes.
Mhm.
My background, so as somebody who is an entrepreneur, I was an entrepreneur and dibble dabbled in all kinds of different businesses. So I had Hindson biotechnologies, because my background is in science, and I was a biotech consultant. And because of the overwhelm that comes with ADD and the lack of organization that I experienced, the lack of planning, the flying by the seat of my pants approach, because I was living an exciting life, right? It's like living on the edge. And that was my addiction is, I mean, that's part of it is how do we get our dopamine hit? And for me, it was living with that excitement of not knowing and taking on projects that were challenging, right? That were a little bit over my head. And from that experience, I I knew something in me needed some help
Mhm.
because after many failures, maybe one that came with one of my clients who was threatening to sue me, I realized, whoa, there's something going on here. Because I was also experiencing depression and anxiety. And so so I was always interested. So I'm very body oriented. I was raised as an athlete, so I participated in athletics throughout my youth. That's what kept me grounded and sane in some
Mhm.
respects in my family life. And so I always loved yoga because it helped calm my nervous system.
Mhm.
So I found an ashram, or it found me. It actually found me. I was working with a teacher in Kelowna when I was working at the Summerland Research Station. Found a wonderful yoga teacher, and the beauty of this type of yoga is it's very what I would call feminine. And I would say that this is where I go off on tangents, is that ADHD it can be a it's an imbalance in the left and right prefrontal
Right.
cortex. Can be. I'm
Mhm.
not saying it is. But that's some of the work that I do with the technology that I'm using is that it balances the right and front prefrontal cortex and also rewires the
Mhm.
brain. So the brain is neuroplastic, so we can heal it. And so the rewiring back into the limbic system, which is in the back of the brain where the emotions exist, with that rewiring, there can be a reconnection with our emotional beings, with our nervous systems in a healthy way. And I did that through yoga.
Okay. So you used yoga, and it's interesting because I really do believe in the reconnecting through bilateral stimulation, which
Mhm.
we have talked about a couple of
Mhm.
times
Mhm.
through EMDR and bilateral beats and
Mhm.
whatnot. Walk me through what you found helped you with your ADHD.
Yeah, profound. As I said, I just go back to the notion of a feminine approach is, th- this goes, uh, a feminine approach uses a deeply reflective
Mhm.
personal approach. So it's not just about isolating parts, which is more of the Cartesian approach to the world that we live in.
Mhm.
Cartesian being we break it down into parts, it's mechanical, it's very what I would call left brain. So it's analytical. I'm
Mhm.
very analytical. And so that was part of the challenge that I had was I was strongly analytical. The yogic practices that I learned and was introduced to help balance me into the right brain because the approach was more creative because there's another side of me. I consider myself a Renaissance woman, but I was stuck in the analytical because that's how I was trained. What it did was it opened me up to the right brain of the reflective, the creative, using drawing, dance. So in my yogic practice, I learned devotional dance. I was drawing symbols from my dreams.
Mhm.
I was listening to my dreams. I was writing down my dreams. And then in the physical practice, it wasn't just a physical yoga practice, it was a writing physical practice.
Okay, you're going to need to expand on that
Let
because there's going to be a lot of people that are thinking the traditional yoga that you're going to yoga class
It's
or you're
not at all.
watching, and this is completely
It's
different.
completely different. Yeah.
Mhm.
What it does is it incorporates spiritual practice, so therefore the breath, visualization, In my experience, it was mantra, so mantra
Hmm.
chanting, which helped immediately calm my nervous system. So it's kind of like humming. I would compare it to a cat. You know, when you hear a cat purring, they're actually self soothing. So it's a form, mantra chanting can be a form of self soothing. So those were the practices so it could, that's what a whole practice could look like, is incorporating and weaving that through while taking the symbolic. And that's what I loved as an artist, was using the symbolism of the pose. So, for example, let's use the mountain pose, a very simple pose, a standing pose. And you would start the practice, you'd have your journal out, which is always like my favorite part. I'd have my journal and I could write, what are the symbols? What does a mountain mean to you? And therefore, it's personal. So, it's a deep exploration. And so, it could be for some people, for everybody, it was different. So, for some, it could be isolation, fear. For others, it could be adventure, beauty, expansiveness, strength. But it depended on where each. So I can get a read on the room simply by listening to the symbols. So we would share the symbols. So
Hmm.
what's one symbol? And then I could read the room of how people were doing based on the symbol that they shared. And that's essentially how, because I mean, all of this practice that I've done for 20 years of deep teacher training, exploration, using the body, using the Kundalini system. So I haven't talked about that. The Kundalini yoga system is based on it's a map of the mind.
Hmm.
So I understand, I feel I can say this. That's why it makes me an expert at this, is because I understand the map of the mind, the maps of the mind, where it goes from, how I can hear somebody in their speech, because I've also learned how to listen to the words of the individual and how this is a reflection of their mind.
Hmm.
And I can see where they're at, whether they're at survival, whether they're at fear and imagination. So usually fear is imagination that is uncultivated. It's just gone, it's run wild, it's run amok. Or they're highly emotional. So there's a lot of anger, frustration. You can see it in their face and their body, a lot of tension, right? So so then I can start unpacking where all of that is. Those are the lower three levels of consciousness in the body that express itself through the body. And the hatha poses reflect those three. So, for example, the mountain I use in the first, that's survival. In the second level of consciousness, imagination, we might use the fish and go into the water because the element is water. And then in that third level of consciousness, which is where the emotions are, all of that you can see is operating our world right now. You can see it, survival and fear. The fear is being programmed. Two, it's all by imagination. And if you're listening to the television, you're seeing all kinds of narratives, stories, images that are feeding your imagination, which are feeding the fears. And then thirdly, you've got the emotions that are feeding it, which are either anger, frustration, sadness, grief, depression, anxiety. Anxiety's off the roof. Is there any wonder if somebody is watching the evening television news? Is there any wonder anxiety is
Why
off the roof?
anxiety is up, and that completely makes sense. It's interesting, Alexandra, as you're talking, what's coming up for me right now, I'm just finishing up a existential therapy course as part of my master's, and there's a really deep connection to the concept of existentialism,
Mm,
the concept of making meaning through the symbolism
mhm.
that you're
Yeah,
and the connection to the mind body
yeah.
that you're discussing. I'm really hearing the connection to the right side of the brain, the
Oh, good.
creative
I'm
side
glad.
of the brain. And so I'm wondering, for those that you are supporting that are really analytical left side, how is that
Oh, good question.
connection for them?
Yeah.
Because I would imagine there would be some tension there.
Yes, and, I typically find that with my male clients.
Mhm.
So, it's really exciting, um, seeing when it does, and I work with very open men clients who are
Mhm.
very open to receiving, and they show up to the morning meditations because part of the program is a morning group meditation, which isn't really meditation, which you've just heard. It's not a regular hatha class. It's not a regular meditation class. It's reflection. My teacher, Swami Radha, said, before you can have meditation, you have to quiet the mind. The only way to quiet the mind is to write, journal it out, or speak it out, or somehow to get it clear on paper. And so that's why the journaling is so important, because it helps bring in clarity. But yeah, the challenge is, I would say it really depends on the client who's willing to go there. And if not, then I find another way in. So if it's not a somatic approach, then it's a creative approach. So it could be through journaling. And so I have male clients who love writing. And so that's a natural fit for them. And so therefore they're operating and start utilizing that right brain, because you bet I just see how trapped, especially men can be in that left brain thinking. Can't deal with, not can't deal, but have disassociated. In some ways, I wouldn't say because disassociated has a psychological component, but have numbed or created a distance, a safe distance from the emotional realm. And that's because it can be it's a vulnerable place for men and women.
Well, in individuals who have had any sort of damage in their left brain that start to use their right brain, there's neural pathways that can re-evolve to be able to leverage and start thinking very differently. I'm thinking of a study that, or a particular case of a neuroscientist who had a stroke in her left brain.
Oh, yeah, that's Jill Bolton Taylor.
Jill Bolton Taylor, exactly. And so that was really fascinating how she still was able to rebuild neural pathways in a different way. And you would know this a little better than I am, because I could see you chomping at the bit. So why don't you take it?
Well, I love her story, right? Because, this is the nature of our world. In school, there's an emphasis on left brain training through through math, science, engineering, technology. And, many, many people choose that pathway. Less of an emphasis on the arts. She was trained as a neuroscientist, as a scientist, as was I. I did a second degree in art. So that is why I feel that I have a very, relatively balanced left right. But so she was really stuck in that left brain thinking. And since her stroke, her story is remarkable, because she quit her job.
Yes.
She's living on a boat. She's living her best life. And I think she's writing, and she's just expressing herself on podcasts, talking and sharing what she knows about the balance between the left and right heads.
Right brain. I think where one of the greatest illustrations of her podcasting was a 2-hour podcast she had done on the Diary of a CEO. And how she actually brought in a brain that she had was donated to her as part of her her neuroscience work, to illustrate that difference between left brain, right brain. And so I think it's really fascinating that we have both for a reason and a purpose. And if we cut off one, we almost cut off a part of our wholeness as humans. And so in our leadership and our entrepreneurship, we need that. Now I want to shift
Absolutely.
I want to shift gears a little bit, because part of the purpose of this is that support to be able to help entrepreneurs and leaders and high-performing professionals that are challenged with ADHD to recognize it as a superpower. And so anyone who's listening here go, oh, that's me. If you were to give them 3 tips that would help them connect with themselves a little differently if they didn't have a chance to take your program, what would those 3 tips be?
Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll just kind of outline the main symptoms of ADHD that people might be encountering and recognize. And that'll be It's the squirrel phenomena that I hear so many people, where it's very difficult to stay focused. And I watch this amongst my colleagues. They'll suddenly get distracted. ADHD is a phenomena, and there are many reasons for that. Many people my age who are moving into menopause are starting to display symptoms of
Mhm.
ADHD because of the the lowering of the
Lowering in estrogen.
estrogen. So I'm seeing the classic symptoms everywhere. So that distractibility, that as I said, the risk taking. There are certain addiction can come up, anxiety, depression, but the one is time management, time blindness, the difficulty of organizing one's life, getting a clear picture of what needs to be done, especially as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Man, when you wake up in the morning and you don't have a structure or a plan for your day, it's like, where do I start? Because immediately overwhelm sets in and it goes, well, I'll just go back to bed.
Yes. Now, when I think
Mm.
about my sibling and my child with ADHD,
Hmm.
that overwhelm and indecision,
And yeah, oh, indecision.
the indecision, without having structure is really,
Yeah,
it's debilitating or can be
yeah.
debilitating. And so what I've found, and I crave structure, but it's because I am like, that's where I thrive is in structures. So I need to preface with, when I decided to go back to school, I decided to update. I have a couple of learning disabilities that were diagnosed when I was a child, and went back to be retested
Mm.
because as a 40-something-year-old going back to school, I wanted to make sure, what do I need to brush up? And so I went in, I was curious, right? I've got a child with autism and a child with ADHD, and where do I fit on that spectrum?
Mhm.
And I'm not, like, I have ADHD tendencies. So,
Mhm.
yes, my husband will say I squirrel. And yes, I lose my phone or my keys multiple
Mhm.
times a day. But I'm not, by classical definition of the DMS 5, I am not ADHD. So I think it's really important when you bring up that element of, is it ADHD? Is it menopause? Is it
Is
just,
it
gosh, is it hypothyroid?
hypothyroidism?
Is it just, gosh darn, forgetfulness? So we need to figure out what it is. But I
Mhm.
think it's also about, how do you adapt to the fact that you're time blind? You need structure and organization. So how do we
Mhm.
help them?
Mhm. Yeah, so, I work, differently with everyone who
Mhm.
comes in front of me, and what I'm able to do is just intuitively sense what a strength of theirs is and see what they're not seeing. And so, for example, if somebody is dealing with time blindness, I had one client, and, like, I always start my and again, each one is so different. One person needed structure, so she needed a desk of her own.
Mhm.
So we started, okay, where are you going to put your, I don't have a place to put my desk, right? There's always some kind of reason. And I'm frustrated because I don't have a desk. It's in the kitchen. Well, that's not a very good place to have a desk where you need to work alone and
Right.
focus and concentrate. And so I challenged her to find a place where she could set up a personal
Mhm.
space for herself, because many of these are mums as well, mums who are entrepreneurs and who want to start businesses. And so she found a space in her closet. Like, she had this big walk in closet and she set up a little desk space. She was so happy. It just, that by itself. So, and I've seen that in many of my clients, is having a clear working space separate from the chaos of the family or the home, where they can
Mhm.
isolate and focus and concentrate.
Something as simple as recognizing the noise and how that is stimulating or potentially overstimulating,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm constantly amazed at individuals who can have multiple different, the TV on while they're listening to music while they're trying to do something else, and I'm like, and then they're wondering why they're distracted
Mhm.
constantly. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, let's take an opportunity to clear out all the noise, focus in on the signal and get yourself in a state of calm.
And that's a big part of my work is so I give them practices is right at the very beginning, we start with mindfulness
Yeah.
practices. And so that involves a multiple ways of really grounding.
Mhm.
And I would say grounding is one of the biggest factors because we're living in a very electrified atmosphere that we don't see. And it is affecting all of us, but particularly people with ADHD. And so any kind of grounding practice, so that's why yoga is a very good one, is because it's an excellent grounding, but also it calms the nervous system and helps to focus the mind.
Yeah.
You just do an eagle pose, right? So I'll teach an eagle pose in my session. Sometimes we're doing yoga in my session, just for, maybe 15 minutes um, because it's a needed practice in that moment, really depends
Mhm.
on what's happening. So, yeah, grounding is so essential. And so the diet. And so that's the other place where I start with people is I need to understand what are they putting in their body and what have they historically put in their body. So I do have a program. It's a short program called Root Cause, and it helps people kind of understand what is contributing or exacerbating because you could have an ADHD diagnosis but doing fine, right? You're doing your meditations, you're doing your yoga, you've got, various practices, but there's something triggered. And so what I do is I help, let's dive in and find out what's happening. And often with diet, that's a key role. So for example, one of my presentations that you heard, I had a student who came and she was all, anxiety, depressed, couldn't concentrate, was scattered all over, couldn't get her assignments done. I found out she wasn't drinking water, she was drinking Pepsi every day.
So that small shift.
1 week later, she came back, she was a different
Ah.
person. So that's that's how easy it can be. But then there's also, if we want to go deep, then it's like, well, oh yeah, I'm always asking how much sugar do you consume in your diet, for example, or carbs? Is there any food allergies? There's all of that plays a role in inflammation because ultimately, I think what we want to do is trace back because there's a lot of theories around inflammation in the brain that contributes to
Yeah.
ADHD. And so it's, well, how do we lower that inflammation? And there's been a lot of research in this field, and some of the key culprits are carbs and seed oils. And so increasing omega fats. So we need to
Mhm.
get more fat for our brain to support us and ground us. So it helps to ground us. And it's a key factor in the dopamine production, as is tyrosine, which is associated with supporting the
Supporting the
thyroid.
thyroid. Yeah.
So it's so, that's why I love it because I love mysteries and unpacking, unlocking the mystery of each individual. It's a bit like being a Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. Well, when you first came in, you mentioned that you're restricting sugar for yourself right now. So, what is your diet consist of right
So right now I'm on a carnivore diet.
now? Okay.
So that is keto. And so there's a lot of research coming out of the US. There's a psychologist out of the US who has been working with children with really serious ADHD symptoms. And
Mhm.
so what they've done is this study where and I don't know how they did this. This is a feat in itself, is to actually get these kids on a keto diet. So you can get them using keto by replacing, say, for example, bread with flaxseed bread. So
Mm,
flax is a good alternative and it's so yummy, but it's filled with healthy omega
yes.
3s and it doesn't have the wheat component. I mean, I could just dive. This is rabbit hole territory for me, but what they've done is got them on a keto diet and all of their ADHD symptoms are gone. None. Zip. Zero ADHD symptoms.
So,
So that's the study. I think it's important to look at it. Don't believe me. But that is the potential of getting off carbs, eating, a different kind of diet, and not to say that you can't enjoy life and have sugar once in a while. That's not what this is about. But it just is about what's 90% of our diet? If 90% is sugar and carbs, then you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. I mean, even if you can get rid of one of those Pepsis a day and replace it with water, shift, those small micro moves. You don't have to go 100%. I mean, it'd be
I'm like this.
ideal.
I'm going to be like, I'm going to be, no,
You gotta go
Karis,
idea. Okay.
no, in that case, with the
Yeah.
sugar and the caffeine in that is, yeah, you do what you can.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying to really see a change, it's like it's getting it down to 1-0
Okay.
water. And I was saying water because water is very key for flushing out the body,
The toxins in
the
the body.
toxins in the body.
Before we go to our segment, because we do a segment of questions from the audience.
Yeah.
I want you to touch a little bit on the importance of exercise in ADHD because I think there's a
Oh,
huge correlation. And I
yeah.
know this is a bit of a rabbit hole, but I think if there's a few things, like if I link it back to the few things that somebody can do to help, it's that mindfulness training. And I'm an MBSR, mindful stress based MSBR trained instructor as well.
Mm.
So mindfulness is a huge aspect. Clean eating is something I'm absolutely passionate about, and then exercise.
Mhm.
And those are all really key things that I've noticed in my clients and my family that has shifted focus
Mm.
and helped to make things a little bit easier to navigate. So talk to me about exercise. And obviously we've been talking about yoga because that's an important aspect, but what type, how often?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the individual. I was the sort who wanted a soothed, slow, meditative approach to exercise. So yoga was really important, but eventually I needed something more intense. And that is something for people with ADHD is some kind of um like an intense aerobic exercise where you're getting the heart going. And I think games are really important. So that's one of the tips that I would give to entrepreneurs with ADHD is that they have play and fun in their lives because, it can just get too serious. And so intense, volleyball, basketball, tennis, anything to get them out, having fun with people. Because I would also say that the thing that contributes, particularly for entrepreneurs with ADHD, is isolation.
Oh, we got to get out.
We
Yes.
absolutely got it out, and we got to laugh and have fun. And so, yeah, I just go and a lot of people too that they love the outdoors. So hiking, swimming, whatever and for my male clients who may not be able to really get in touch with that right brain, it's through the body and it's through their exercise. So yeah, I had one client who's just using it, just recently got out of a relationship and he's just taken his life back through exercise. He just ran and ran and ran. And he took control of everything. It was just remarkable and connected more to himself.
Yeah.
And it was through his body, one of the ways.
It is really interesting. I've got a couple of clients who the major shift that they did after coaching with me was move their exercise, which they used to do at night, to the morning.
Yeah.
And what it did in itself was allow them to be more focused during the day, and they were having a hard time sleeping at night.
If they were exercising at night.
If they were exercising at night, because it was wiring them right up.
Yeah.
And so that shift in itself to exercising in the morning and then getting themselves organized, doing some journaling and
Structuring and
focus,
planning your day.
and
I would just come back to that is like, on Sunday nights, plan out your week, do a rough sketch. And then each night, but even on Sundays is just to really plug in everything. So you have a 9 to 5 schedule and there's no questions when you wake up, because when we wake up in the morning and don't know what's going on, that adds to the overall.
It absolutely does. And so one of my biggest tips is very similar. You plan your month, plan your week, plan your day.
Yeah.
Do it and get it into the calendar, whether your week you're planning on Friday for Monday or first
Mhm.
thing Monday morning, or that month you've got to plan either the last day of the month or the first day of the month.
Yeah.
Get it in there so that you understand what's happening and take advantage of time blocking
Yeah.
and
So
stick to it.
that's one of the thing with ADHD is we need to see things.
Yes.
So if something's hidden away, like if the calendar, the day timer is closed, that's not going to support us. So we need things out. So for example, supplementation, which I recommend, it's got to be on the
It has to be on
countertop.
the counter. Yeah.
So, and it's got to be labeled. And sometimes we need like reminders in our phones. So that our phones can be a great blessing of reminding us what we need to
Mhm.
do. But coming back to the exercise, I would just add that a evening practice of gentle yoga can be a very helpful, or journaling. I would say ending the day with a journal practice of where you're actually processing your day and releasing it before
Mm.
bed. Because, yeah, many people with ADHD have trouble sleeping. So you want to let go so you don't have the monkey mind busy throughout the night. So it could be just, yeah, what was and I always stay focused on the positive. What were my victories? Yeah, well, what's arising right now? What action do I need to take? So you're not stewing at midnight.
Mhm. I'm getting what was just coming up for me as you were talking is the importance of either if you're going to journal using technology, making sure you've got the blue light on, or
Mm,
switching it over to writing by hand, because there's something very, very important and
yeah,
cathartic
yeah.
about being able to let go and have the energy leave through your fingertips.
That's right, and just a little, it's you wanna turn the blue light off.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
you want those blue
Yes.
blocking glasses on, and, yes, because so many people are so tech, addicted, and so, yeah, I agree. I handwrite.
Yes.
I have a box of journals. I had boxes of journals.
So I think it's really interesting, and these glasses, and I'm just going to plug a girlfriend that we both know
Yeah.
who runs a mobile optician, Donna Gamble of
Mhm.
I See Clearly. These actually are 100% blocking.
Yeah.
And I was working with a business management company, and the founder kind of brought in a tester to kind of test, everybody's glasses. It was just something he was really learning about blue light,
Mhm.
and he tested his, which he had bought a $600 pair of um, high tech glasses,
Mhm.
but only filtered 75%. Somebody else tested theirs and it was 50, and these things
Mhm.
100%,
Yeah.
and he was shocked.
Mhm.
So
I'm using, blue blocking glasses, and
mhm,
my sleep quality is
change.
improved
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
it's quite amazing. So I'm getting we gotta wrap up here, but I wanna do and honor the questions we do have from the audience. And so I'm gonna read out, let me just scan here for one. This is from Lisa. How do I stay consistent when my life is chaotic and unpredictable? Which I know happens to the best of us. But when you have ADHD, that chaos and
Mm.
unpredictability can
Absolutely.
feel a little extra overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Um, Number 1 is you have to make time for yourself.
Mm,
Um, where you go into your room and you sit quietly, and this is where, like, just 5 minutes of sitting quietly. So if it means getting up earlier in the morning, getting up earlier, sitting with a cup of tea, taking some time to write, and ground. The grounding is so important in staying consistent when there's a lot of chaos. And then it's like, how do you manage the chaos?
mm,
Right. And so I've worked with clients on how to do that. And it's most often if you have ADHD, remember 60 to 80% of ADHD diagnoses are considered genetic. So you're going to have it running in the family. In my family, my brother, his son, ADHD. And so you may be dealing with children with ADHD.
Mhm.
And so how do you manage that? And so I have a lot of different strategies, but I think it's like the whole family needs to get on board um, on either setting sitting down and creating a plan, like a schedule, a structure for everybody. Goes up on the refrigerator. Everybody knows what they're doing. You engage the kids in the chores of the day. They're helping you out. Most often, women are trying to do it all. That's the mask of perfection. And so we have to invite our families in to support us. And they're waiting to do that. It's just how do we do that? How do we get them? How do we invite them in? And so that it's just really about doing that. And then having like it, it's about boundaries for women. And people with ADHD really struggle with their boundaries. And it's about learning how to set clear boundaries with ourselves.
Yeah. I'm going to add one or two things because that list is absolutely beautiful, especially boundaries.
Mm.
I would say creating consistency starts with the is discipline of being able to do so. And so knowing what's truly important and what you can let go of. So taking back, taking stock, and recognizing you don't have to do absolutely
Oh
everything.
my God, yeah.
And it is okay to say no.
Hmm.
And learning how to do so gracefully by saying, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm going to pass this off to somebody else.
Hmm.
Or I'm going to introduce you to somebody who can help
Hmm.
and not have that guilt. And then I would say the other thing is leveraging the tools that you do have at hand to navigate that. So taking the time to coordinate, and I'm thinking about, the busy family schedules, and as women, we're juggling home, life, work, everything, and really taking that time on a Sunday, that half an hour before everybody gets up in the morning, and coordinate the day
Mm.
and the week,
Mm.
and understanding what's really, truly important and what can slide off.
I would just add that all of us need to learn how to communicate with our partners and our children.
Oh, yeah.
And this is one of the areas that I support my clients with is how to ask for our needs. I think the biggest question I would ask to the audience right now is what are your needs in the relationship,
Mm,
in the family, in your work, in your business? List your needs because we're going around with all of these unmet needs. We have no idea, and so we get triggered, and this can set off the ADHD symptoms of anxiety, for example, frustration, anger. That's also one of the challenges is losing our tempers, and it's because of a long ago building up of unmet needs.
yeah. Beautifully said. Alexandra, I want to thank you so much
Mm.
for joining me today. This is obviously a conversation that we could continue on for hours on end. If people want to find you,
Hmm.
what's the
Yes,
best way?
AlexandraHindson.com. That easy. And I have a YouTube site. You can find me there on the website, but also a YouTube station and LinkedIn and Facebook. So, but yeah, go to alexandrahindson.com and you'll get most of the links there.
Amazing. Alexandra, thank you so much for joining
Mm,
me today on the
my
Karis Wright
pleasure.
Show. I want to remind you to continue to lead with heart and do the things that you are doing so exceptionally well because
Mm,
it is much needed.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, and you as well.
thank you.
Yeah.